Greetings. My name is Jade Blankenship, and I'm a member of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. After receiving an accounting degree, I worked as a grants coordinator for a local nonprofit organization, and recently became a founding member of a nonprofit aimed at providing financial education resources in tribal communities. Grants have been an essential part of my work, and I'm happy to share my experience with you. This video is a part of a series of educational videos from Raven Rock Strategy Group, LLC, around grants management for tribes and tribal organizations. In this video, we will share some tips and resources for identifying potential grant funding for your tribal operations and special projects, including navigating federal grant opportunities, building a trusted network, and the work of private foundations in granting to tribes and tribal organizations. The first step in identifying grant opportunities is to identify the need. We know that tribes and tribal organizations carry a heavy burden of providing services and resources to their tribal members and the communities they serve. That means the needs are often great. To be effective in pursuing grant funding, it is vital that you first identify the issue you are trying to solve. We have seen many organizations pursue grant funding, be awarded the funding, and then try to develop a plan of how to use that funding. We've seen organizations risk having to return funds to a granting organization because they could not spend the funds in time or for the purpose that the award was made. Having a strategic plan for your tribe or tribal organization is a good way to identify the need in your community. Through a strategic planning process, your tribe or organization can identify needs and potential solutions, goals and objectives, and develop action plans that can include grant-funded initiatives. This planning work is a great starting point for identifying grant opportunities that will support the work of a strategic plan. It will allow you to pursue grant funding opportunities strategically and more effectively. Grant funding to tribes and tribal organizations typically comes from government agencies, public charities, and private foundations. Government agencies include federal, state, and local agencies who make funds available to tribes and tribal organizations for certain activities, either on a funding formula basis or competitive award. Funding formula grants are made based on an established framework or formula. These type of grants can be based on variables like population, service area, and calculable rates like poverty, homelessness, educational attainment, and more. Competitive grants are made based on the strength of a grant proposal and the amount of available funding. While formula-based grants typically require less administrative work because of their more rigid framework, the set amounts could mean funds are not sufficient to fully address the needs. Competitive grants typically require more administrative work and involve a level of uncertainty about if funds will be made available to the requesting organization. Let's do our first check for understanding question. The Federal Highway Program distributes grant funds based on population, vehicle miles traveled, and infrastructure condition ratings. This is an example of a formula-based grant. True or false? And the answer is true. Funds distributed based on calculating variables like population, miles, and ratings is an example of a formula-based grant. For federal grant opportunities, you should familiarize yourself with grants.gov and consider creating individual and organizational profiles. Grants.gov is a centralized location where you can apply for and manage federal grant awards. Here you can explore available funding opportunities, find grant writing and grant management resources, apply for funding, and more. You will need to establish an account with grants.gov to use the site. Once registered for an account on the site, you can also create a profile that will help match your organization to funding opportunities. To create an organizational profile, you will need to enter your organization's UEI, or Unique Entity Identifier number. Your UEI is registered through the SAM.gov site. On grants.gov, you can view posted and forecasted funding opportunities, eligibility requirements, and additional details about current and future grant opportunities. You can search grant opportunities by keyword, program area, and agency to find potential funding opportunities to meet your organizational needs. You can also find contact information about funding opportunities and how to contact agencies for additional information, details, or questions about funding opportunities. You can also receive electronic delivery of notices of funding opportunities, or NOFOs, through grants.gov to your email address on file. Another step you can take in identifying funding opportunities is to build a trusted network. There are many professionals working across tribes and tribal organizations who have been doing this work for many years and have navigated funding opportunities, awards, and full grant lifecycle management. These people are familiar with federal agencies, funding opportunities, pros and cons of awards, and can help you determine what opportunities might exist for grant funding for your tribe or tribal organization. Your network should also include people who work for the agencies themselves. Building a robust professional network will help you identify funding opportunities and determine what funding resources would be a good fit for your work. It is important to learn from the experience of others and their advice for navigating certain funding programs. You can learn from their experiences with funding agencies and be connected within their network for grant professionals. Making this connection will bring valuable insights to your tribe or tribal organization. As you find funding opportunities that are a good fit for your work, be sure to build agency relationships as well. Regular contact with your program officer and others at the funding agency can help you stay in compliance with your award. Program-level contacts can provide important information about funding programs, potential changes, technical assistance for managing your award, and insights about other opportunities that may be available. A strong, well-managed professional network is a valuable tool for success for any grants administrator. Let's move to another check for understanding question. True or false? Grant administrators should consider building a professional network of grant professionals, but exclude agency-level contacts from their network. And the answer is false. Agency-level contacts are an important part of a grant administrator's professional network and can provide valuable feedback about funding opportunities. Finally, to round out our discussion about identifying grant opportunities for your tribe or tribal organization, let's talk about private foundations and public charities. Public charities are 501c3 organizations as identified by the Internal Revenue Service. They are typically direct service providers but can also pass through funding to other organizations. It is possible that your tribe or tribal organization could receive funding for its projects or initiatives through a public charity organization. This will be most common when the work of your tribe or organization aligns with the work of a public charity. Generally, public charities exist to do certain types of work: the advancement of education, advancement of science, to lessen the burdens of government, to provide relief to the poor, the underserved or disabled, and other work as defined by the IRS. Typically, these organizations fundraise to support their work, including from public and private sources. A private foundation is also a nonprofit charitable organization, but it derives its funding usually from an individual, family, or business. Foundations can be operating or non-operating. With non-operating foundations, dispersing funds to organizations who do mission-aligned work. Not all foundations are funders, meaning not all foundations actually make grants to others. Many private foundations that do make grants are funding into work of Indigenous communities, particularly around healthcare, education, housing, language and cultural preservation, food and agriculture, energy, and tribal economies. It is important to keep in mind that there are sometimes limitations on how much funding support an organization can receive from a private foundation, depending on how the organization is organized and legally formed. So, how do you find these private foundations? Many private foundations are place or issue-based foundations, which means they only fund into certain geographic areas or for certain strategic purposes. The best way to find a private foundation funder is through your professional network. Often, others in your professional network may have come across opportunities to work with a private foundation to fund parts of their work. Another good way to find a private foundation funder is through connections with professional organizations such as networks or associations. Many funders are part of professional organizations, networks, and associations. Start by looking in your area or region, or also following other tribes and tribal organizations to see what funders are providing financial support for important work. Let's do our last check for understanding question. True or false? Not all private foundations are funders, meaning some do not make grants at all. And the answer is true. Some foundations are not funders or grant makers. Thanks for listening in, and be sure to take a look at other videos that are a part of this series for additional information. And feel free to visit us at ravenrockstrategy.com for more resources.